So, Greg.
Yeah.
While we were playing Ratchet and Clank,
right,
you were playing a little game called Quantum Break.
I did. I played Quantum Break over the weekend and beat it over the weekend.
Tell us all about it.
Tim, I really enjoyed it. I liked Quantum Break quite a bit. And I was happy about that because coming in, it seemed like the reviews were a bit mixed and I wasn't sure where I was going to go. But based on the Let's Play we had done, weeks back with Remedy when they came through town, I was like, fuck. Because like when Quantum Break originally got announced and we didn't even know what the fuck it was. We were seeing a fucking ship hit a bridge and then this lady's got glass coming out her eye and stuff. It seemed cool. And it was exciting that Remedy was doing something after, Alan Wake I enjoyed as well. I was interested to see them try something new though, but keep doing the storytelling they're known for. And so I was like, okay, cool. It was very much one of those games of like, I'm blackout. I don't need to know anything about it. You know what I mean? I don't have any real desire to know more about this until I get my hands on it. So when we sat down to do a Let's Play, it was that, okay, cool. Like the story seems cool. The acting seems cool. I like where it's going. When we're talking about all these different things, I had never really stopped to think about how mechanically it was going to play. And so like to sit down and be like, oh, it's a third person shooter. Like it's unabashedly a third person shooter, picking up, your machine gun, you have a handgun, you have your machine gun slot, your handgun slot, and then another gun slot. You know what I mean? Like, oh, cool. I'm picking these up and running around killing these things. Transitioning into that was cool during the Let's Play. Getting a taste of the powers in the Let's Play was cool. But then to sit down and play the entire game, that's when it really all clicked together. And what I found the most interesting about it was the fact that what I thought, could have been their Achilles heel was those live action segments, right? Like, remember how confusing this was when we're doing Quantum Break. It's going to be this narrative driven thing. It's a game, but then there's also TV episodes in there. And it was so confusing when they announced that of like, well, is this part of Xbox's entertainment initiative? Is this something that's airing? No, it's coming. Then you can't stream. And then eventually when you get to it, it's like, no, they just play in the episode and you're streaming them off the internet and done. I'm like, oh, okay, that seems weird and stupid, but well, whatever. You know what I mean? Because how many times have we seen that where games try to transition some aspect into a real life movie?
Twisted Metal.
Exactly.
Need for Speed.
Exactly. And do those ever really work? Twisted Metal is like a B movie, so that makes sense. You know what I mean? But this one where we're telling a real narrative, we're telling a real story. We've hired actors and actresses, this guy from Game of Thrones, Iceman.
Animorphs.
Sorry.
Iceman. He was in Animorphs.
Sean Ashmore.
Yeah.
We've brought these people in that from films and TV and how they're supposed to look. So now we're going to go transition back and forth like, is that going to work? But what was fascinating about it and what it sounds like such a marketing bullshit point of like, because it was like, oh, well, the game you're playing through is the hero, going up against Monarch. Then the episodes you watch are about what's happening with Monarch and what the bad guys are up to in this world. You're like, all right, that kind of sounds stupid and it's going to be cliche and dumb and whatever. And it went the opposite where I'm playing through the first level. I'm, going to meet my buddy. And there's this dude over there who's like sitting there in a black trench coat. And he's like, just keep, the protesters over there. I'm like, oh, like you're going to do something. Like you're a bad guy. And sure enough, he's a bad guy. He's like roughing you up. And, he's like a henchman or whatever. And you're like, well, fuck this guy, stupid and just generic ass henchman. And then that first episode is so centered, and the rest of them are so centered around his plot thread. And it's this plot thread of it's the multiple plot threads of all the people who are working for Monarch, who are the bad guys, even if they don't know they're the bad guys, really. You know what I mean? And you're going through and meeting them, and this stupid henchman, right? That's like totally a throwaway, dumb character, and seems like your typical like, I'm just, this fucking mountain of a man. I'm a white guy with a gun. You're going to do this, da da da. And then to go with him back home and meet his wife and see what's happening and then see him.
The wife.
It's always the wife. And see how his relationship with her and then the company and his bosses and how it all develops and how it goes and his, story throughout it. It was like, fuck, this is really good. And I started getting super excited with it because it would be like, I'm getting hungry. Oh, I'm gonna hit an episode soon, and I'll pause it as soon as it starts, and then I'll go cook dinner, and then I'll come back and sit and watch. And that's what I did. I didn't plan, but like every time I was ready for a meal during this one giant gameplay day, I'd make sure that I was ready to watch an episode while I did it. And you're meeting characters in the episodes that you won't meet in the game or see in the game. Then there are times that you are, of course, gonna cross over that Sean Ashmore's in it or whatever, or the guy from Game of Thrones. I have it up because I'm gonna screw it up, but what? Aiden. I always want to get the stupid Aiden. That still screws me up from David Cage.
Who is he in Game of Thrones?
Littlefinger.
Got it. That's right. Yes.
He's the bad guy, and he's the Monarch guy or whatever. And so like he's in both of them, and it works in the fact that the game doesn't run in that uncanny valley scenario where I'm watching the game or playing the game, or I'm watching the episodes and playing the game and be like, this doesn't look good enough. They don't look real enough. This isn't, you know what I mean? Like you get over that where they transition, you know, when they transition out, it's awesome. It does work. And then what I love about it, and again, it's not stupid because I was just blacked out. I didn't want to know much about it, right? Is I love all the time travel stuff they fuck around with and do different stuff with. And you knew that was going to be there. It's Quantum Break, the stopping time. But as much as you're going back into the past and fucking with the timeline and their version, every version of time travel and the timeline's a little bit different, right? And there's totally is the thing of like, well, the past had to happen the way it happened to get us to here, so that will always be the thing. No matter what, you can't change that. And trying to fuck with that or trying to change it or trying to fuck that stuff up is great. And then it gets really cool in the fact that like, so you're playing as through the episodes, and you're playing as Jack Joyce. You're running around. You're this guy trying to help your brother, Dominic Monaghan. What up? And do all this different time travel stuff. That's what you play as. And then when you end one of the acts as him or whatever, you get this interstitial where you go off and play as Aiden or whatever, and the bad guy in Monarch or whatever, and you play a real short section with him where you make a choice that then influences, like, is the branching path for that. So it's like the first one that was in our Let's Play, right, is, some people saw you. You guys came in to get Jack and his brother. A whole bunch of protests saw you. You captured all these kids on campus, basically, and you have all these kids. And it's like, what do you want to do with these college kids? And like, you have two choices in front of you that you get to like pull the trigger and then have him talk a little bit. And see his time powers give him a little bit of a ability to see what's coming, even though he can't see it crystal clear. So you get like little snippets of conversations and what they're saying. And so it's like, your first choice with it is either with these kids, you can take this PR approach where you're going to say, okay, what we're going to do is not, the leader of the kids, we're going to put on camera and she's going to read a statement blaming Jack. He's a terrorist. This is what happens. But she's going to still be, you're going to have a lot of loose ends and people are going to do it. But the city will trust us for the most part, that they'll be after Jack. The downside is that they'll have Jackson have these new allies and these kids that can help him and get him information. Or we can straight up murder all these kids. We can kill every witness, take them out, do all this different stuff. But that the town is going to wonder what happened to all these kids in college, and they're going to turn on you, and like, so you have to, and like, that's just the first choice. And from there, like every time you get to one of these points, you get those branching things that then not only change, of course, what things going to happen in the game, it's going to change what happens in the next episode in a way. It's going to, like, there's all these like ripple effects of it. And then in the game, there are these there's only like one or two, there's like neat little nods, but it's neat little nods, right? Where in the game, you'll find things like there's an equation on a board again in the very early part of the game that if you go up to and interact with, your brother will come up and be like, oh, they got it wrong, and they'll fix it or whatever, then they'll go. And then in the episode, there's then an optional scene where they're like, did you know that somebody solved the equation last night? No, what? And they're talking about it, and then like the camera pans over, and it's like a neat little nod to what you've done. And there's like 7 or 8 of those in the game. They're like these little breadcrumbs to go fuck around with. But even without those, the episodes are cool and it works and it's fun. And what it's been interesting is I've seen a little bit of it in comments and stuff, and then Colin and I have talked about it before, and like he'd say, oh yeah, but people are pissed about those cutscenes, right? And I'm like, oh, like they aren't cutscenes, right? They aren't like Metal Gear cutscenes where you're playing and then boom, this thing, like it's very clear, like you're playing, you're done playing, here's your interstitial with the bad guy, and here's this episode. That is optional, right? Like you could skip through it and I think have a fine time with the game and play the game, and the mechanics of the game would be really cool, but you wouldn't understand like, I mean, I think there's characters in the episodes I like more than people I like in the game, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like there's this one guy, I pulled him up here. He tweeted back at us when I tweeted about it. Charlie is the character. Marshall Allman is the actor or whatever. And Charlie's whole story is super interesting because he's kind of what we always, the Kevin Smith jokes of like stormtroopers, right? Of like, do they know they're working for the bad guys necessarily? And like how, so he's like doing all this stuff and then slowly kind of realizing how fucked up everything is and what's happening. And then like, cause he doesn't know that there's like all this time travel shit happening until they see it firsthand, and going through his story and doing like, I don't know. It was a really cool, really fascinating experience of playing and totally, I feel like I'm talking so much about the actors and the cutscenes. I enjoyed the gameplay so much because the gameplay did a great job of ramping you up to feeling like you're fucking awesome. Because it is like you get the powers pretty quick, and then it is like you're going through and finding collectibles in the environment that then are like upgradable points to make the powers better. And so as you get to the end, and it's like you walk into a room full of dudes that before I'd been like, oh fuck, like in cover, jumping out of cover, but now it's like speed running around, or I guess, freezing time and running around really quickly and running up and fucking punching him and killing him, grabbing the one guy, ripping his backpack thing off. And then the heavy comes around that was such a hard fight in the beginning. And then all of a sudden you just charge up your time powers and blast him with it. So he's slowly going down and you run up on a shotgun and just douche. It's awesome. The combat and the way it all comes together is awesome. It falls, I feel like I haven't played a pure third person shooter in a long time. And it definitely falls into that, I think, the trouble spot that so many do, where it's all right, we're ramping up to the very end, so here's 3 corridors of every enemy you've Jesus Christ. And then some kids were bitching about it online for being hard, the final boss battle. I didn't have that experience. I just find it really boring. But I mean, that's all just the normal thing of
opinions.
Trying to end a game. I feel like every time you get to an end, you have a boss battle, so you're
you need to do something.
Yeah, how are you going to do or whatever. I had a blast. I had a lot of fun. People kept asking me if I would play it again. In a different world, yeah, where we had more time and I'm more free time and there weren't a million games to play right now, I would totally run it again to see the different choices and how it all plays out. But had a great time, and I was super happy it came through. I heard rumors, I caught the headline on Twitter once in a while of Quantum Break's 5.5 hours, and I was like, ooh, is it? It wasn't for me. It was I think between 10.5, 12, I forget what my clock was at the end, and that was missing some of the collectibles, not having fully upgraded.
Yeah.
I would go back and see how the other choices played out and stuff like that.
Got a lot of questions.
I know. Sorry, I'm
that was
pouring
great.
it all out to you.
So I don't really know how this works. How long are the episodes?
About 22 minutes.
Okay, and how many are there? Ish.
I would say there's 5. If I remember it off the top of my head how many acts there were, I could tell you precisely. There's 4 or 5, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not that much.
No.
So is it is the total length of it about a movie's length?
Of the cutscene or the cutscenes of the television episodes? Yeah, probably, right? Because that would be 80 minutes right there if it was even, because there's at least 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you said you could play the game without watching the things because they're optional, but they're not really optional. They're part of it.
Sure, they're telling you cool things and making you care more about the characters.
Could you watch just the movie and not, or just the show and not play the game?
Oh, well, no, because you have to unlock them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they are cutscenes, but they're optional cutscenes.
Cutscenes to me always make it sound like, all right, cool, we've opened a door and the cutscene plays and I'm talking to you and da-da-da, and then the cutscene ends and we're right back where we were. Mm-hmm. Whereas this is very much I feel like it's almost intersplicing chapters. There's a chapter of gameplay, there's a chapter of this video, chapter of gameplay, chapter of the video, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those, if you're in a mood and you just want to play the game, right, and just see Jack's story and you don't care why Monarch's doing what they're doing or any of that stuff like that, maybe not the game for you, because this game is this game is a Remedy game, and what that means is here it is dripping with narrative, it is dripping with story. It's when you're walking around, you can, the first part, you get dropped off by the cabbie and you walk over to meet your friend or whatever in the physics building. That walk took me 20 minutes because I walked over and talked to the protest girl, and then I read the flyers that were up, and then I watched the Alan Wake teaser, and then I did, you know what I mean? You do all these different things, and then once you're in there, even you're finding computers, and they're all. I played over the weekend. It's a narrative objectives or narrative pieces found. Is it going to be X out of Y or whatever? And so you'll go to a computer and open it, and you'll get an email that you read that's talking about what's happening, and it's usually somebody from Monarch talking to somebody else from Monarch, and it's a game where I think. It's a whole experience, but if you did just want a gameplay, you could totally, all right, cool, I'll get to come back to this and pop out of the movie, go play the game, and then at the end, sit down and be all right, now I'll watch every episode back to back to back. I wouldn't recommend it.
How's the production value on the show? Because my worry would be that it's kind of, suffering. Sure. And you said something about some of the actors not being in all of it or whatever. Do you think that was a budget thing? Or
no, I think it's the fact that why it doesn't make sense for Charlie's would-be girlfriend really to get in Jack Joyce's story at all. They all have their own narrative and objective in the story, and so they're off doing their thing, and the worlds don't have to cross over necessarily. You know what I mean? Production values for the TV show I thought were really well done. Don't get me wrong, there's definitely scenes with Aiden and his right-hand man or whatever, where it's okay, you guys are on green, you're not really in this office building, but then there's other stuff where it's there's an awesome fight scene in a hospital. And it was oh, this is actually really well done. It's not Daredevil, but it's it isn't clear that I'm watching something. You're watching something that I feel all right, cool, this is not TV because it's more, not risque, but it feels grittier, right? But not low budge. But it's not
okay.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. And then does it, when you're playing it, does the TV stuff feel like expanded universe stuff that you're just getting at the time, so it like kind of adds to it, or does it really feel like it's a cohesive experience with the gameplay and TV show together?
I think it's a cohesive experience for sure, because like there it is, you know. There's one part with the guy I was talking about before where you would pick up as Jack and you would leave a building and you would not understand what you just did in that building because what happened in the episode. Now, not necessarily Jack running around doing it because they want you to control that, obviously, but in terms of like they're having this like tense standoff, you know what I mean? It's not a real spoiler, but the tense standoff and their guns are drawn and they're yelling at each other, and then the camera just does like the little like the cutting back and forth between people, and it cuts to the guy and then it pulls out and his hand's empty. And then they cut to the girl and her hand's empty and she's like, fuck. And she throws up in the van and he's gone. And so like, that's the thing of like, he, you know, it can exist in between the space between spaces. He can be in these moments or whatever. So for him to wake up in the van and then freeze time and get out and do that stuff, and then you pick up with him after that part of the episode's end, is like, that was awesome. Like that was a really cool move.
What's very exciting to me is the idea of, so it's choice based and there's different branching paths, how that interplays with the video footage. Is it all slight things like, oh, there's this bonus thing if you do this, then there's an equation on the board, or is there episodes that you are totally different?
That's a great question. I have not gone and watched all the alternate whatever it would be. Like for sure, there's a choice you make as the Monarch lead right before like the final stuff, where theoretically when you come back that should be a completely different episode and ending. I haven't gone and explored it myself to watch it, but it's definitely, he's acting in a different way and talking in a different way, and you're choosing at one point who to trust, so who's going to be with you and what they're going to react to is going to be different as well.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So obviously Xbox exclusive, right, console wise.
Yeah, sure.
Is it worth PS4 owners seeking out an Xbox, whether that's using a friend's or getting one to play this game?
Getting one, I mean, is always hard. Don't buy a system for one game, I always say. You know what I mean? If you can, I mean, I think there's plenty of other reasons. Gears 4 is coming out this year, and State of Decay, come on. But in terms of borrowing it, yeah, I would say for sure. Like you have one, I'd say for sure play it. If you're into story-based games, if you're into time travel, if you're into cool performances and a different kind of game, like, you know what I mean? Because again, like cutscenes, we've seen cutscenes before, but I don't feel like we've seen episodic narrative in this way, where it's like, all right, cool, play as this guy, great, you've reached the end of his act, let's check in on what's happening over here on these other people and what's going on. Yeah, I mean, I guess the biggest question is, does it feel gimmicky at any point? Like, it didn't for me. No, and that was my whole thing. When that first episode starts, I'm like, let's see how bad it looks. Let's see where am I going to see that clearly everything is green screen and these people aren't putting in good performances, and everybody buys in. There's no actor I'm watching who's like, oh, totally phoning this in. They don't really care about what's happening. Cool. Yeah. Any questions, Colin?
No, Greg and I talked about it pretty extensively before, you know, when he beat it. So I don't have any questions that I have lingering at this point. Sounds great, but not a game I'll probably explore anytime soon. I assume the next Xbox One game I'll play is Gears 4. Gears. But yeah, I satiated myself by talking to Greg about it this weekend, so I have no outstanding questions. And you touched on basically everything that I was wondering, or that I had wondered. Although I do think it's telling, depending on the game you're looking for, because you're right, Remedy is always very plot driven. That you didn't even talk about how the game played for a very long time. So I think that says, I think that says more about what the emphasis of the game is, as opposed to maybe some more dynamic but still third person shooting. That seems to be pretty standard, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Uncharted has very standard third person. Exactly, that's the thing. Like, if you're gonna talk about what's brilliant and different and newsworthy, I think it is the acting of the whole cast. I think it is the episodic infrastructure, and then it is like the time powers. But we've had time powers before. We fucked around before. Shooting's fun. It works really well. It does. I kept making a joke because I was playing it, and then Fran and Ty hit me up to come on for Division, and it was so weird. I was telling them to play a game where headshots mattered again. You know what I mean? After a Division where it's just like, I'm just blasting you in the face, waiting for you to die. Whereas like Quantum Break is like, you pop up and you perfect, and like, especially when it's the last person and it'll go slow mo. You're like, fuck yes, this is awesome. Yeah. Fucking die, pig. They're not cops, they're bad guys. So thumbs up? Yeah, thumbs up. I liked it a lot. Cool. This topic brought to us by ProFlowers. Mom has always been an expert on everything. Cooking, relationship advice, fixing your cuts and bruises. Do jeans count as business casual? How quickly does chicken thaw? How do I do my taxes? The one thing you can't go to her for advice on is what to get her for Mother's Day. That's true. Shit, is Mother's Day coming up? How far away is Mother's Day? I don't know. May 14th? May? Okay. So it's around there. It's around there. Not to worry.
You'll look like an expert on Mother's Day when you use Pro Flowers. Pro Flowers takes the guesswork out of sending mom, grandma, or wife the perfect Mother's Day gift. Pro Flowers are guaranteed to be fresh and beautiful for at least 7 days or your money back. You can get mom 100 blooms with a free glass vase for $19.99 plus shipping and handling, or make her day extra special by upgrading to a premium vase and add gourmet chocolates for just $9.99 more. Visit proflowers.com, click the blue microphone in the top right corner, and type in KF Games. Remember, Mother's Day is right around the corner. Order today because this offer expires Friday at midnight. I'm not sure which Friday.
Whoever makes the
Friday
vase
that
out
makes
of
sense.
chocolate, that'll be the one.
That'll be the
winner.
real. That would probably be a bit more than an extra $9.99. But anyways, go to proflowers.com, click on that blue microphone, type in KF Games, get a good deal. Make your mom happy.
Make your mama proud.
Yeah.